Welcome to the Reel to Reel podcast, where the stories behind the board go on record. I'm your host, Bruce Hensal, and we're here to give you an inside look into the music industry. I'm joined by my co-host, Leo, from the Melrose Audio team.
Hello guys, how are you doing today?
We're here at the audio studio in the Melrose Center of the Orlando Public Library. Today's guest is the local hero, Buster Cousins, an amazing local talent, and the great Joe Vitale, drummer extraordinaire for some of the biggest names in the industry. Please welcome our guest, Tim Kelleher, otherwise known as Buster Cousins, a local Orlando musician and performer. He's an active guitarist, songwriter, and engineer in the blues music scene, and he shared the stage with artists such as
Chambers Brothers, Lester Chambers, Bo Diddley, quite a few, a lot of blues people, a lot of blues artists from, I had a house band at a local bar called the Junkyard, and every week the agent would send us a CD, and Friday night we would perform the show with whoever the artist was, Nappy Brown or, Carrie Bell, a lot of blues people.
That's great. Earn while you learn.
Earn while you learn.
Welcome, Tim. So, have you only played in Florida, only locally, or?
No, we traveled a lot up and down the East Coast, New England, Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico.
Oh wow,
yeah,
that's cool.
Traveled around a lot. It was great, man. Yeah, New Orleans, of course, New Orleans.
New Orleans, that's what.
Yep.
I've been down to Puerto Rico myself, and they are very receptive to every type of music.
Every type.
Every single type.
I mean, it was great. It was great. We played down there 4 nights in a row in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It was great.
That's great. Well, Tim and I relationship began because a mutual friend, Beth McKee, introduced me to Tim, and they said they were doing a Stephen Stills tribute album. And because of my affiliation with Stephen in Manassas, I wanted to see if I could get involved, and I spoke to Tim, and we decided to work together. And let's take a listen to one of the tunes off of the record. Here's 4 and 20.
A 4 and 20 years ago, come into this life, the son of a woman and a man who lived in strife. He was tired of being poor, and he wasn't into selling door to door, and he worked like the devil to be more. A different kind of poverty now upsets me so. The night after sleepless night, I walk the floor and want to know, why am I so alone? Where is my woman? Can I bring her home? Have I driven her away? Is she gone?
Tim and I recorded at Tim's studio, Hippie House, here in Orlando, Florida, and it was really fun. He had recorded probably 2/3 of the record when I became involved, and because of my affiliation with Stephen in Manassas, I thought, let's get some of the Manassas people to play on this record. So we contacted Al Perkins, pedal steel player, sent him the tracks to Nashville, and Al put on some parts.
Fantastic. It was great, man. It's unreal. That guy's a real deal, Al Perkins, for sure.
And then we decided, let's try and get another Manassas alum on the record. Wow. So I contacted my friend Paul Harris, and Tim and I went to South Florida and recorded Paul in an Airbnb that we rented. And we brought down an electric keyboard and put piano and organ on some of the tunes.
Also, if we can do that before the break, I wanted to show the actual record, Love and War. This looks pretty cool cover. We got, about 14 songs?
Yep.
You kind of naturally broke it into Love and War, so that's pretty
Yeah.
awesome.
That was Bruce's idea, actually. This has some kind of mystic meaning. I'm not sure what it is.
Well,
He does that. He does
But
that.
I like it.
having known Stephen,
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of the two sides of his personality.
Perfect.
All right, cool.
So let's take a listen to Paul and Al playing on It Doesn't Matter on the Buster Cousins CD.
Falling and spinning, losing and winning, keeping my head. Watching for signal, fear is a vigil. Was I misled? I remember you said that you don't want to forget me. It doesn't matter which of our fantasies fail. Every tomorrow, looking to borrow a piece of today. Run a bit faster, here comes a catcher making his play. You had better not stay, you will soon be surrounded. It doesn't matter which of our fantasies sway.
Tim, you want to talk a little bit about our session with Paul Harris?
Oh, yeah. We went down to Miami down there. I got a Airbnb, like you were saying, and went and picked him up from the place he stayed at. He's a very interesting character. He had a very interesting coat on that day, and which we still talk about. And but he's an amazing guy and a real genius on the keyboards. His whole life, he's on. You've probably heard him play piano on so many songs you don't even know that it's him. He's that kind.
Bob Seger's
Bob
Against the
Seger,
Wind.
Against the Wind. B.B. King's Thrill Is Gone. This guy is really some class act.
He's one of the geniuses.
Yep, he sure is.
And did he? I haven't heard all of the tracks on the record just yet. Did he do mostly like organs or piano?
He did a little bit of both, wouldn't you say, Bruce? About
Yeah.
50-50.
Yeah.
And, he has this innate musician's thing, sort of like a right brain, left brain thing going on. Like, he'll play a piano part, and you go, well, that's kind of weird. That sounds a little strange. And then he'll come back and do another track with the organ on the other side, and it's like they fit perfectly. They go,
He was
he's just,
thinking
he
of
just, yeah. He's
And
got
he does
it.
that after hearing the song one time.
One time.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, but
He knows his trade.
Yeah, he
he's
knows.
he was the go-to session player in New York and Los Angeles and then Miami later on.
Oh wow.
And Paul and I actually lived on a houseboat together in North Miami
Wow.
when I worked at Criteria. And Paul used to play at a vegetarian restaurant called the Good Earth. And he would sit down and play piano for 4.5 hours straight and never repeat a song.
Oh wow. That's crazy.
Amazing.
May I ask you something?
Sure, yeah.
So, I see that you have about. I know that Bruce's involvement was kind of, a little later since you had started already.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that Bruce's involvement kind of like did a twist on the sound of the record, or did it? I know that he does the magic, so I know that personally. But
Right.
from your perspective, like how did you feel as far as the sound? Where did it go from? You had it kind of worked to throw towards the middle, and then what happened after, like when he was?
When you're, like he's tied to all those people, so it was like almost immediate sort of gratification because you felt like he knew the music, where it was coming from. So it gave me more confidence to just do what I did too. You know what I mean? So it really was. It worked out really well. And Bruce, like you were saying about the magic, he's taught me so much in the studio about recording. It's great. I mean, I've learned a lot over the last few years. I learned a lot about recording, miking techniques, a lot of which, it's about capturing the sound, of the instrument, the drum, the guitar, the tones, getting the right tones, which he obviously knew. So it was a great experience. And I probably recorded about 20 songs, and then we picked the ones we thought were the best. You know what I mean? You always do a little extra, and then sort of pick out the ones that you really think you got your finger on somewhat,
Well, and then we had the luxury of, I came up with the idea of putting together 2 songs. Isn't It About Time?
Well, correct, yes.
And For What It's Worth. And Tim came up with an amazing arrangement for Isn't It About Time on his antique banjo uke. And it segues into the song everybody's heard from Stephen,
For What It's Worth.
For What It's Worth. And
it was a different twist on it for sure,
It
right?
certainly was. And
Yep.
part of that was sparked by Chris Hillman, who
It was.
I had sent him some of the early tracks to listen to, and he said, "Gee, can't this guy play in his own style?" Only because Tim had done such faithful recreations of the Manassas tunes.
Right.
So that was our chance to sort of take the tune and stretch it out of shape.
Yep. Twist it up a little bit, and it works. It works. Yep. Great, man.
I just wanted to add one more thing. In my personal experience, I've done my best to learn as much audio as possible as a songwriter, just to be a little more comfortable and like a little bit more a better communicator on the booth.
Sure.
So and I think especially nowadays where people kind of feel more empowered to do a lot of things themselves. I think is important to be able to like witness and learn from people who know what they're doing and have that experience. Working with people, I feel like is really amazing. That's why I do music in general, but like also because that way you become a better communicator and you really learn about certain things that I don't think any book or website or anything could give you. So.
Right. And you know what else too? I think, like say practicing something, you can practice something for hours and hours, but if you're not practicing the right thing, you're out of luck. You know what I mean? You're not helping yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you only have 2 ears.
And you only have 2
All right. I think it's a good time to take a break. And we'll be back with the Reel to Reel podcast.
Who gonna live? Who gonna die? Well, you want to know. Does it give you a sense of power to say yes or no? Isn't it about time? Isn't it about time we learn? Isn't it about time? Isn't it about time we learn? Isn't it about time? Isn't it about time we learn? Isn't it about time? Isn't it about time we learn? Stop, hey, what's that sound?
to the Reel to Reel podcast, where the stories behind the board go on record. We're here today with my co-host Leo from the Melrose Center Audio team,
Yeah.
and guitarist, singer, songwriter Buster Cousins, local Orlando hero. Tim, what inspired you to record this album of Stephen Stills covers?
Well, it's interesting you asked that. Back in 1968, my next door neighbor was a disc jockey at the local radio station here, WLOF, Channel 95, and he was going to a concert the next day of the Beach Boys, the Buffalo Springfield, and the Strawberry Alarm Clock. And when I saw the Buffalo Springfield come out, they were just, I don't know, it just set me off. And I've loved that music ever since that day, that night that I saw them. And realized then later that Steve Stills and Neil Young and Richie Furay were all in that band. It was just a lot of talent. I was fortunate to see the Buffalo Springfield. A lot of people never even saw them play live because they only were together, I think, a couple years.
Yeah.
They were, although they did a 6-concert reunion tour that our next guest, Joe Vitale, played drums
Sure,
on.
there you go.
So it all kind of ties together.
It does. Yep.
Yeah, I'm
Most
a big Neil Young fan, so
Yep.
that's pretty awesome.
Yep.
I can imagine the impact.
Oh, it was
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. So that kind of led you to kind of gave you the musical foundation that kind of
That
it's
genre, kind of California folk rock music, the Byrds, Buffalo Springfield. I was into all that stuff, and you know, Stephen was just such a great guitar player. I saw Manassas in Tampa in '72, I think it was.
Yes.
Bruce.
Mm-hmm.
Bruce was the sound man at the show.
Yeah.
So it all, like you said, it all flowed together, you know. And those guys have been my inspiration for pretty much my whole thing, you know,
career.
go around. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's all present in your record, right? On the Love and War.
Mm-hmm.
You guys work together on. That's pretty awesome. And I see, and I think this might be a question for Bruce, that you broke it up into Love and War. So it has like 2 sections. Several tracks, but it's kind of broken down into 2 main themes.
Well, yeah, Stephen, obviously, for what it's worth, was a protest song, and Stephen did a lot of protest songs.
Yeah, he did.
It Doesn't Matter. So that gave us, and Soldier, Soldier, which was about the Vietnam War. So it kind of gave us a natural way to break it up because the rest of them were love songs. And speaking of love songs, there's probably Stephen's second most famous song. And we'll want to thank Timmy for being here this week.
Appreciate it.
Yes,
Thank
thank
Leo,
you.
thank the Melrose Center and the staff. And we'll take you out with Love the One You're With.
And the eagle flies with the dove. And if you can't be with the one you love, you better love the one you're with. Love the one you're with. Love the one you're with.
Turn your heart right into joy. See the girl and you're born. And you get it together and you make it nice. You ain't gonna need any more advice. If there's a rose and a
Mystic love, and the eagle flies with the dove. And if you can't be with the one you love,
you better love the one you're with.
love the one you're with. Love the one you're with. Love the one you're with.
Our next guest is Joe Vitale, drummer, singer, songwriter, producer, multi-instrumentalist, author, carpenter, husband, father, brother, and friend. I've known Joe for over 40 years, and he's one of our industry's treasures. How you doing, Joe?
I'm good. Thank you for that reminder of how old I am.
You're welcome.
That's good to be this age. I like being this age.
Good. I do too.
I was talking to my doctor, there ain't no cure. He said you need a good rest, not another tour. You're going round and around, life is just a blur. Well, I keep that in mind, and I thank you, sir. When I'm too old to rock and roll, that's that shovel and take my hoe. I say when I'm too old to rock and roll, that's that shovel and take my hoe.
Leo is representing the Melrose Center, and we've got my friend Buster Cousins, who's has done the Stephen Stills tribute album Love and War, and we just finished talking about that. So say hello to Buster.
Hey, Buster.
Hey, buddy, how you doing today?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Good to talk to you guys.
Yeah, man. Hey, I liked the little story you had in your book about you being a soapbox derby, being in the soapbox derby racers. I was quite envious.
Oh man, those were so much fun. I guess kids are still doing it, and I live in Ohio, and in Akron, Ohio is where they have the big national race.
Yep. Awesome.
And yeah, it was a lot of fun back then. Kept me out of trouble, Probably kept me out of jail too. The guys wanted to go down and, hey, let's go down and take some candy from the store. I go, no, I got to work on my soapbox service.
There
Yeah,
you
it worked
go.
pretty good.
Avoiding the life
Nah,
of
it was-
crime.
That was fun. That was fun. A lot
Awesome.
of fun.
Awesome.
Well, let me give you a little background onto my introduction to Joe Vitale. I saw Joe in a band called The Childs at Chippewa Lake, and he was standing up playing the drums, and it blew my mind. I said, I've got to find out who this guy is. And a few years later, I was working as a roadie for a band called The Measles, and they said, Joe Vitale, he used to be our drummer. I said, no, come on. And at this time, I had met Joe Walsh and got to know Joe, and I left Kent, Ohio, moved to California, wound up in Colorado, and Joe Walsh brought Joe Vitale out, and I was living there working for Stephen Stills in Manassas, and because of my friendship with Joe, I met Joe Vitale, and I remember your little drum setup in your apartment where you had the mic on the floor that you stepped on for the kick drum.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Didn't want to get thrown out of the apartment building.
And that was a pretty amazing time. The Barnstorm was a wild ride for a lot of us. And
It really was. It was a perfect time, perfect kind of music. It was just, all the planets were lined up, and worked out good. And people still listening to that music, and we're thankful for it.
I know that there's a link between Tim and Joe, right? About because we were talking earlier on the podcast about Tim, being blown away by the Buffalo and
The Buffalo
Yeah.
Springfield.
Mhm.
Yeah. That was a great band. I thought that inspired me for years.
and Joe Vitale was the last drummer with that band.
That's right.
yeah, that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, how was that little Buffalo Springfield reunion, Joe?
Well, I'll tell you what, it was one of the coolest experiences in my life. sadly we lost Dewey and Bruce,
Yep.
bass
Yeah.
player and drummer, and so me and the late Rick Rosas took over for that, and it was supposed to be a pretty good sized reunion tour, and heck, we rehearsed longer than the tour lasted. But we did 7 shows, and they sold out in a half hour.
Wow.
And according to management and the personnel, they said that we played for more people, and the guys made more money than they did in all the years before in Buffalo Springfield.
Wonderful.
Oh,
Of course, times have changed, but we played for more people than they had played if you added up all their shows back in 68, 9, or 67 and 8.
Wow.
And Neil had, he had all kinds of stuff on his plate. He's always busy. And I just think he didn't want to commit, and the timing was bad or something. I don't know, but I'll tell you what, it was perfect. It worked perfectly. And we were all bummed. We were sad because once in a great while in this industry, you get in a band and everything, everything's perfect, And I mean, as far as how perfect it could be, we were there. And yeah, it was a bummer. We did 7 shows, and we were supposed to do more, but Neil bailed, and that was the end of that.
I remember as an engineer on Hotel California, you wound up playing with the Eagles on the tour. And one of my favorite stories is about the drum fill you played.
Oh, yeah. You're totally familiar with the Eagles, and so you know how they are. They when they play live, they want to play it like the record, and I really respect them for that, because people pay a lot of money to see these bands, and when you go to see a live show, there's nothing worse than a band that really changes the arrangement or the style or this and that and the other. And the Eagles, they're famous for, they sound amazing live. It's like sitting there listening to the record and you're watching them record the record. It's absolutely wonderful. But, if you play it the same way every night, after a while it gets a little boring.
Yeah.
Well, boring is the wrong word. It gets a little routine. And so one night we're playing the song Those Shoes, and that's a funky, great tune, and Don Felder and Joe Walsh have a dueling talk box solo in it, and they're rocking, and they're really going at it, and I was just in the moment playing drums, and coming out of that solo, I played this fancy, kind of funky, syncopated drum fill, and the guys up front, Joe, Don, Timothy, D. Schmidt, and all that, Glenn turned around and they went, yeah, and I didn't get that from Henley, but he was over on the other side. It doesn't matter. Anyway, later that night, I'm in the hotel and I get a call in my hotel room, and it's John Henley, and he never used to call me in my room or anything like that. It was after the show, and so he calls me, and because he's from Texas, he called me Joe Bob. So he said, "Hey, Joe Bob, come on upstairs." And for a second, and so I go up there, and I knock on his door, and he opens the door with the chain still on it, and he's in his Ritz-Carlton robe, and he says, "Hey, Joe Bob," he says, "you know that drum fill coming out of that song there tonight, those shoes and all that?" I thought, oh man, how cool, he's going to compliment me, right? And he looked at me and he went, "Don't do that."
What?
And then he says, "Have a nice night," and he shuts the door. So,
Oh my God.
yeah. Anyway, I mean, but that's not, it was kind of like, oh, okay, I get it. But that's not half the story. The next day, we have another gig, and we're at sound check, and Glenn Fry comes up to me, and he goes, "Hey, Joe Bob, you know that drum fill?" And I was, oh, God, here we go again. And he goes, and he pulls out a $100 bill, and he says, "Here, play it again."
Oh, whoa.
I said,
Wow.
No. There's not enough zeros on that bill for me to play that again. That was interesting. And then, I mean, me and him are good friends, and we never had any weirdness about it. Just that he's a boss. He was my boss, and I respect that. And he didn't want that in there, so needless to say, I did not play that fill again.
Oh, wow.
That's great. I love that. Jeez. Well, I remember when, I believe it was 1985, I was living back in Ohio, and I get a phone call from Walsh saying, hey, the record plant is closing on 3rd Street, and they're having a party. Can you fly out to go to the party? I said, sure. And when I get to the airport the next day, there's Joe, Mr. Vitale, getting ready to get on the airplane. So we went to Los Angeles to attend the last jam at the record plant. And
Well, I remember that.
it was an amazing night.
Did you get a brick?
I did. I got my own
I
brick.
did not get a brick. I was bummed. I didn't get a brick. They were handing out bricks from the place, but you certainly deserve one. You spent enough time there.
Did my time. But yeah, it was great because I don't know if you remember, they had like a reception line
Yeah.
where everybody was. I think Ringo was there, Stevie Wonder.
Yeah.
And I had worked with Stevie Wonder on Songs of the Key of Life and used to play air hockey with him. So as we're walking through the reception line, shaking everybody's hands, I get up to Stevie and I shook his hand and I said, Stevie, I don't know if you remember me, but I'm Bruce Hensal. We used to play air hockey together. And gave me that big grin and shook his head the way he did. And he said, I never forget a face.
That's pretty good.
Wow.
I can't believe that was 1985.
Yes, it was.
Oh my,
Yes.
that's a long time ago. Jeez.
Well, speaking of a long time ago, another one of my favorite stories of you, with you and Walsh, was making John Entwistle's record and the surprise in your bathroom.
Oh yeah, leave it up to those two guys, those two nuts. Anyway, we started John Entwistle's solo record. I should have expected that from those two guys. Any one of them could have done something, but you put those two together and it's trouble. And so, and the rest is so. I love John Entwistle. He was such a nice, decent human being, and I just really miss him. And I'm a huge fan of The Who. And so me and Joe are over there making John's solo record, and we started it in L.A., and that was kind of, harmless, nothing much. Then we get into his turf. We go over to England and record over there. And one of the nights we went out to John's castle. He actually had a castle. I mean, it was a real 14th century castle or something. It's huge thing, and kind of weird. There's all these stairways going to different parts, and none of them connected, and it was just like out of a movie, And so we had a few drinks in his bar, and as I was tired, I wanted to go to bed. Apparently, Joe and John had me downstairs there, and before I was there, they had gone up to my bedroom that I was staying at, and John had a full-size, real human skeleton, and he had it in the closet or something. Anyway,
Nice.
and he put it on the toilet with his hand on the toilet paper, this skeleton. And so I had a few drinks, and I go upstairs, and they walked over to the bottom of the steps, and good night, Joe. See you tomorrow at the studio. I said, good night, guys. And they just sat there, and they waited. And I got up the top steps down the hall, and all of a sudden they heard the horrific scream from me. They got me. They nailed me. There happened to be a lion or a tiger-headed rug in my room. I had to cover it up. I couldn't look at anything like that. Anyway, these guys were like, thanks a lot. Almost had a heart attack.
Oh my God.
Joe, I want to take this moment to thank you once again for being here on the podcast. We do have to take a quick technical break, but I'm definitely looking forward to talk a little bit more about more awesome stories and your book that we actually have a copy of here studio, and also a little bit about your record. So I have so many questions too, and I know probably Tim has a few of his own.
And we will be listening to some tracks off of Joe's solo album, Speaking in Drums. And we'll be right back with Joe Vitale in a few minutes.
Turn back the pages, turn back the clock. Digging through some oldies at the antique shop. All those great old songs I remember again. I can't help but thinking it was better then. We had a hot rod cars, screaming guitars, girls in love with a jukebox star. Everybody was rocking on a Friday night, dancing with their babe, holding her tight. God bless the music. I say God bless the music. God bless the music. God bless the roots of rock and roll.
Hey, Joe, glad to have you back.
Hey, hey.
The last time I saw you play was at the Barnstorm reunion at the Colorado reunion for the Colorado Music Hall of Fame induction, and it was amazing to see that band together again.
It really was. I never thought we would do that. Just because I mean, we're all in good health and still playing, but it's hard to put something like that together, and especially for like one show. And so it was great that we were inducted. We were honored by that, and having it be part of the Dan Fogelberg Day and Caribou Ranch and all that, it just really felt like old. It was like a family reunion, and but playing together with those guys, it was so awesome. I thought the band was just great and outstanding. We sounded good. We were having fun. We weren't trying to prove anything. We were just playing, and we were really, really happy with our performance, and it looked good on TV, and but it was great to see, especially people like you and Bill Simzik and Jim Gershow and all the guys. It was an old family reunion. It seemed like, and a lot of memories and a lot of years, and it was great to see so many faces that we used to see years ago at our gigs.
Yep, JB, Crinkle. I remember.
Yeah, JB and Crinkle and Keith Bristow and
Right.
everybody. It was fantastic.
I remember turning to my wife during Rocky Mountain Way and saying, I've heard this song probably 2,000 times, and this is the best I ever heard it.
Yeah, it was good, wasn't it? It really came out good.
It was amazing.
Joe, I had a quick question for you, if you're able to hear me.
Yep.
I know that you mentioned that sometimes, in the industry, when you're up and coming or trying to get a name for yourself, you sometimes have to, like you said, you have something to prove. What band that you ever play with, I know you play with many wonderful groups. What was the band that was the most demanding for you? Was it the Eagles or which one?
Probably the Eagles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, you know why? Because don't get me wrong, this is one great band.
Yeah, no questions. Yeah.
And greatness demands greatness, and
Yep.
they weren't like demanding. You just respected them so much that you wanted to give it 110%, and that's not always easy.
Yeah.
So they were the most difficult to maintain that quality. But you know what? It made all of us better players and better musicians and singers and everything, because what they expected was, you had to bring it. And so it wasn't, they are not a loose band. I've been in bands that are kind of loose that, a little out of tune, but it was fun. Nah, that never didn't fly with those guys.
I see. Yeah, like you said, greatness demands greatness.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, I see now that you're doing online sessions. Can you tell us a little about your studio and how someone could get you to play on their record?
Well, yeah, a lot of people are doing this now. I use a studio. It's not mine. I use a studio in near here, and it's because it's just so state of the art, and it's so nice that I don't have to deal with all that end of it. I just have to show up. They got a great drum kit there, or I bring my kit, and we import files from anywhere in the world. I overdub on them, send them back, then they talk to me about it. And if there's any repairs or changes, we do that. And it's all on my website is how you can contact me to do that. And there's directions and all that, how to do it. And a lot of musicians are doing that now because I see all kinds of ads. I mean, we had an ad up, but I see all kinds of ads for all kinds of players that are doing that because the technology is fantastic. I just made a record with these guys from Sweden, and I didn't have to get on a plane and fly 10 hours and at a ridiculous cost, and then hotels, and what about gear and everything else that goes along with it. And so the internet has made it so incredibly, this world so small now that I can play on drums on anybody's record anywhere in the world, as so are the other musicians online doing this. And it's, obviously, you made a ton of records. You know that it's probably, way better to have everybody in one room and you do it the old school way. But if that doesn't happen, this works as well. And so it works too, but it's always way more fun to have everybody in the same room. And I do think that in the long run, I think you probably get a little bit better product out of everybody playing it together. But I've heard some serious good stuff that were split up around the world doing it like this. So we get these files sent in, and I take them on a jump drive up to the studio nearby here. It's a privately owned studio, and it's not like a big deal. But this guy, it's almost like a project studio, but it's just got killer gear, and he's got every form of recording, and so no matter what format people send to us, he's got it and makes it easy.
Well, I remember in the 70s we used to joke about phoning in your parts. Now we're doing it.
Joe, I also wanted to take advantage of this moment to have you talk a little bit about your book, Backstage Pass. have it right
Right.
here in front of the camera. So I see a lot of really awesome pictures and awesome stories in it. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it's a pretty simple story. When you're on the road and in touring, the way touring works now is there's a tour bus, some flying, but mostly a tour bus. And after shows, you get on the bus, you have a little something to eat maybe, and, you're still wound up. You don't go to bed right away. But so you sit around and you tell stories, and, everybody's always got road stories, and they're sometimes pretty hilarious. And so because of the characters that I've worked with, I probably had the most stories or the most weird ones or funny ones. And so they kept telling me, at the end of a tour, they said, "Man, you got to write a book." And I never thought of it like that, because I didn't ever think about writing a book. And I was telling my wife Susie about it when I get home from the road, and she goes, "Yes, you definitely need to write a book." She goes, "I'm going to write it. You tell me the stories, I'm going to write it." So my wife Susie wrote this incredible book. She did such a great job, and it's just so easy to read. It's fun. There's no dirt. There's just funny stuff. We got over 750 photos in it. People like to see photos, and but it's just we've never had a bad review, and everybody seems to love it. So we're very thankful.
The other thing I wanted to ask, a personal question, is what about the cover? I really like the cover. The guys in the audio team and myself were making jokes about like the spaghetti and all that. What inspired the cover of the book?
Well, I think it's because I'm Italian. So I'm a drummer and Italian. I couldn't think of a better thing to do than eat a plate of pasta off of a snare drum.
And that about sums up Mr. Vitale. Joe, I can't thank you enough for participating. I want to thank the audience for joining us on this Reel to Reel podcast live from the Melrose Center. I'm your host, Bruce Hensal, and with my co-host, Leo. I'd like to thank our guests, Buster Cousins and Joe Vitale.
Thank you so much, Tim, and thank you, Joe, and thank you, Bruce. Thank you so much.
And by the way, the book and the CD are available at joevitaleondrums.com.
Thank you so much, you guys. This has been really fun.